Welcome to the podcast. So, as you know, our aim here is to provide useful information to Airbnb hosts and those people who are looking to invest in the short stay accommodation space. So the idea is to speak to successful people like yourself, and I know you've been operating in the industry for a while and run a portfolio of over 20 short-term rental properties. So I think hopefully you'll have some good information for our listeners, and welcome on board.
Thank you very much. Yes, hi.
Brilliant. So so what we like to do on the podcast is basically just start with your funniest guest story. So obviously people coming to one of your Airbnbs and like the funniest experience that you've had with a guest.
Well, they're not necessarily funny in the main, I have to say. However, a gentleman arrived a few weeks ago with his entire family after a 4-hour journey, only to find that his actual stay was the week after. So he had all his children there in tow, and unfortunately, the house wasn't ready. Luckily, we didn't have any guests at the time, so we were able to let them in, but it was 7 o'clock at night, so they literally had to do their own cleaning, make their own beds. I think it's the ideal start to the journey, but at least they actually got to stay here and it wasn't just, back in the car.
Oh, so that's nice. You let them in the end?
Yeah, of course. With everybody, we go over and above, do what we can.
Definitely. No, that's very nice. I think if a guest turned up a week early, I think probably struggled to let them in. But yeah, no, that's good. So in terms of the background on your company, so your company is My Boutique Stay, and you've just launched a fabulous new website, which looks great, by the way. So just a bit of background on My Boutique Stay, how you guys got started, and how you got into the industry.
Sure. So it all started when, my background is construction and renovation. From a young child, I worked with my aunt, who was a property developer, and I studied construction. So I had the background knowledge there. And then I met my partner, who lived an hour away, and forever independent, rather than moving in, I decided to buy a property in the locality. So I bought an apartment with beautiful Georgian features, and over the course of a few months, I renovated it myself, the sash windows, everything, did every element. But during that time, I sort of got my feet under the table a little bit with my partner and decided that rather than moving into the property, that we would then try and put it onto Airbnb, because it was a relatively unknown thing. We're talking 4 years ago in the area where we are now. So we put it onto Airbnb and it did very, very well. And then about 9 months, 10 months later, we've had quite a lot of problems with the neighbours in the opposite flat, and they decided to sell. So we took the opportunity to go into business together, and we purchased the second property, which we then renovated. And then one of his rental properties as well, we turned that into a holiday let. So we had 3, and then I had a child, and then when my child was born, I was like, I really felt the necessity to have something of my own, to grow something. So while I Gina Forded the hell out of that poor child, he was sleeping, I built my first website. And by the time he was 1, I had some organic traffic coming from local estate agents recommending me. It was great in their sales pitch when it came to a second home in the area. Speak to Gemma, she can make your property pay. And then by the time my kid was 2, I had a pretty decent client base, and it's just grown ever since, really, from recommendations. So that's it. And then we obviously rebranded recently, and because we're very fond of like boutique holidays and like quirky interiors and whatnot. So, we're trying to put together a portfolio of take it away from the mass market and have something that's a little bit different, that's sort of an experience in itself, not just the property, but we also handpick like local restaurants and like days out and whatnot. So we sort of, rather than going to a Google search, we give you a selection of the very best in the area, basically. So
definitely, because you guys are experts in your local area, I guess you can actually, it better than almost anyone else. So people come to stay, you can give them the best things to do, the best restaurants. It's very good.
Exactly. So we spend hours when we go somewhere on holiday. We would spend great amount of time, not finding the place, knowing that it's at a certain standard and you're getting a certain spread basically. But we'd also spend hours and hours on TripAdvisor looking for those little gems amongst, everything you get on the internet.
Definitely, yeah. I think hosts can save guests a lot of time by recommending them things to do in the local area, maybe as part of a welcome pack, either online or offline. I think that's a crucial part of the guest experience, and something that actually probably a lot of hosts miss, especially if they're new to hosting.
Definitely.
Oh, that's cool. So, in terms of a normal business day, how does that look for you?
So a normal business day would start by spending time answering any guest messages that are over and above just the standard sort of automated stuff, and making sure that any sort of requirements are fed to the cleaning team. You might have a birthday or travel cart or all these sort of bits and bobs. And then I do a bit of training with the staff. I go out and I, check properties and make sure that we're continuing to provide like this specific experience, which takes a lot of time. And then, a lot of accounting, a lot of behind the scenes stocks and, all the laundry and linens and all that sort of jazz. And obviously you have that occasion when all your staff decide to get COVID or whatever, and you literally have 8 cleans to do in 6 hours, which happens.
So COVID's still having an impact?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a little bit of a flare up locally, which takes staff out, for days at a time. But hopefully they've all had it now again, so should go in a clear run.
You mentioned earlier having automated message responses. Do you guys use any particular software for that?
Yes, we do use a channel manager. I think when you get to a certain level, your systems are extremely important. So we have a channel manager that will advertise on multiple platforms, that will feed. We can use the APIs then to power our own website and to take card payments. And through that, you can do automated messaging. I think a lot of the sites offer the automated messaging, but it's really important. Keep it concise and friendly. Don't go too far with it. Sometimes we give too much information. And we also use like intelligent software for pricing to track like the local trends. So we have this took a long time to get that system like running smoothly and to find the best, providers for that.
I guess that's why obviously you guys have probably mastered that software and come up with these systems and processes over time. So new hosts sort of coming online in your area, it might be a better place to actually using somebody like yourself to manage their property. It's saving time, but also tapping into those processes that you built over years and years that you've been doing this.
Well, yeah, so I've done like 15 years in sales and marketing, as well as the property experience. So I see it like, it's a target-driven thing for me. I got the properties almost on a board, and we're monitoring the production and how they're actually operating. So if a property starts to slump, we would look at, is it something to do with the exposure? Is it to do with the imagery? Is it to do with the interior design? Like, you have to keep on in it and keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it until you get to a point where the property is performing. Mm-hmm. So it's it's an ongoing process, but it does it has took us 5 years really to get to where we are now.
Hone it, yeah. And so, what's in terms of a property that you've taken on that has maybe been poorly performing? What would you say the best you've done is in terms of increasing that performance from taking on a poorly performing property from a host to where you've managed to get it to?
Well, so like for example, I have one lady who she had a little 2-bed property and she wanted to go travelling. Lovely lady from Manchester, northerner like me, down the southwest, so instantly connected. And she was a bit nervous about making changes, but she returns £2,000 to £3,000 a month, which takes her around the world and gives her that income. And it's just, I think it's her energy as well. Like, she's got good energy, and as a result, it's very smooth process. But the trust is there with all my clients. If I say something needs to be changed, they'll 99% of the time they'll trust me to do that, and that takes a long time to build up that kind of trust. You have to take baby steps.
Of course, yeah. I think if you sort of went in and said, "Oh, you need to change everything," they'd probably maybe run away.
Yeah, I think we're in a time now where at first as like the holiday let thing came out, you could get away with offering a substandard product. I think we're all aware that now the competition is a lot fiercer. So if you're not willing to invest, any new properties that I was to take on, I wouldn't do that again, because I would probably say to the client, if it wasn't that situation, that you need to be prepared to spend £5,000 to £10,000 to get the property to where it is. This has been, this lady's one of my first clients, and it's a number of years to do it. So, it is, you have to really, you can't do it half-heartedly. You've got to really go for it if you want to actually make some money out of it.
That's interesting. And that brings us nicely on to what would be your ultimate top tip? Just if you could just give one tip to any Airbnb host, what would it be?
It would be, so it's easy to take photographs of a property and make it look spectacular. But if the guest experience doesn't match the photographs, you're never going to succeed. Reviews are absolutely everything. Every time a guest stays at one of our properties, upon leaving, they will receive a message just to ask them how everything was at the property, and just explain to them that as a company that we're always looking to improve our properties. So, what is it that they think that we could improve? And we act upon pretty much every single suggestion. Obviously, some suggestions are a bit out of our league, like, a swimming pool or a hot tub. But in the main, if you continue to act on those suggestions, not only will you have a property that is, everybody will completely love, everyone's going to tell you, they're all going to experience the same problems, but not everybody's going to take the time to tell you. But you're also, by doing that, giving them the opportunity to air any issues, like before they come to make their review. And then you can even go a step further by saying, right, well, thank you so much for that. Next time you come back, to check up on us to make sure we've implemented these changes, have 10% off the next day. So you can, it's a very good piece of customer service. And it also helps you to get to know your property, because a lot of us don't go and live or stay in our properties for a prolonged period of time. So the only people who really can get that true guest experience from is the guests themselves. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
That's really interesting. So you're basically kind of stepping in before the negative review even happens. So maybe a guest has had a negative experience, but you're giving them an opportunity to vent to you rather than on Airbnb, where potentially other future guests could see it and be put off coming.
Exactly. We also prior to that message, the morning after their very first night, so they've arrived, they've settled in, and the very next morning, how is everything for you at the property? So you're asking again, is everything okay? And at that point, again, if there's anything they're not happy with, then they're willing to tell you. At first, it's a scary question to ask, because you don't want to have to do extra work. What if you do that and you make that time to do that in the early stages? Eventually, the properties will run themselves, and it's, from the sort of nuts and bolts type of thing. So obviously, you have maintenance issues. I've had a lock go today, so that's why I was late for our meeting. Had to go and wait and let a locksmith in to drill a lock, but these things happen.
I feel that happens all the time.
It does.
Brilliant. That's really good. Really insightful. So just bring us on to the state of the short-term rental market in the UK right now. So obviously there's a lot going on. There's talk of a cost of living crisis. I don't know what your thoughts are on the broader UK market and how things are looking going into, obviously, winter and then on to 2023.
Yeah, so I've thought about this question. I think that if I wouldn't invest in the property right now. I think the house price is still quite high. I don't think they've caught up yet with what's going on nationally. Cost of living crisis also. But at the same time, money is worth nothing in the bank. So what I would recommend is looking at your own property. Have you got a room? Have you got an annex? Could you split your house? Like, we are splitting our house in two. We have a natural split through the property. So we'll be soundproofing the inner doors, and we're investing in that. So that will then help us with our cost of living. But even if it's just your own property and you don't have that, you could also make sure your own property is up to standard, so that maybe when you want to go on holiday next year, then you have the ability to let your property pay for itself, pay for your holiday. I think we need to be investing in low risk at home.
So maybe not investing in new properties to put on Airbnb or the other platforms right now, but maybe looking at your own property and improving that, extending that even to take advantage of these platforms, maybe when you're not using your main property.
If you find a property that's a no-brainer and it stacks up, like what you'd have to invest, always double that figure, what you think you're going to have to spend. You never make the mistake of doing a budget and thinking that's what it's going to be. So it's going to be double every time. And if you find a property that stacks up financially and you've researched the local area and you just know it's the goer, then go for it. But I think it's we're in uncertain territory. We don't know what the holiday market's going to do. Are people going to tighten down and it's going to improve the market because they're not going to want to go overseas, or is it actually going to completely halt the market and people aren't going to travel at all? They're going to stay at home and they're going to make the most of their local area because they can't afford to travel. So it's a little bit up in the air at the minute.
Definitely. And then in terms of obviously the cost of living, so increase in energy prices, are you seeing that impact the profitability of listings?
Yeah, well, locally, as I said, we started out 4 odd years ago, and we were pretty much on our own. There was probably 10 holiday lets in the locality. We're a massive, we've got Howes and Worth, we've got lots of Babington House, Soho House Group. We've got so many very cool things around here. We're very much a destination for London. And what we've seen is especially lockdown in itself, the amount of properties that are now short-term rentals in the area is just phenomenal. There was 50% increase during lockdown itself. So, that has driven down prices, obviously. It happens in all big cities. You can see properties that are absolutely stunning. They spent a fortune, but they're on for £150 a night, just purely because of the competition. So you've got to be very, very careful, I think. I think we're having to improve all our properties constantly to ensure that we stay at the top, the best of what's local, basically.
Brilliant. I think that's kind of a few questions covered. But yeah, I mean, in terms of people who are coming into the market then, so obviously you said right now might not be the best time, but I mean, what would be your top tips for people who still want to maybe go ahead and do it and maybe have found that property that they think is ideal? Obviously they've done the maths on it and think they can make it work. What would be your top tips for people looking to take that plunge into holiday let investing?
Well, I think firstly, like you say, you've got to do your research. You've got to understand your competition. You've got to know how many bookings they're getting, their nightly rate, how many there are. There's so many factors other than the property stacking up. It's not just property can stack up, but it's also got to stack up as a rental as well. So don't just buy a property thinking you're going to do holiday letting. Because if it doesn't work, you need to have like a get out. So you need to know that it would stack up. You get your return on both a standard AST and a holiday let, I would say that. And I think now with the amount of properties that are on the market, you've got to look at your who you're marketing to. If you've got a 3-bedroom property, you're going to probably market it to families. You need to have a garden, you need to have parking, and you just need to really work it back from your guest and make sure that you're ticking all the bases basically. And making sure that your bathrooms and your kitchens, you're going to have to replace those if they're not perfect. Since COVID, the cleanliness and the people need to see things almost clinical. It needs to be very, very clean and have that impression that it's almost new and it's clean and it's fresh and it's safe. You know what I mean?
So,
and decor as well. Just be brave and really think about what you're going to do with the interiors. Read some magazines. Don't just spec it out like a AST. Make sure it's got some warmth and some character and some stuff in it. Games and books, and make it feel like a home from home rather than what we're used to, like vacuous, cold, empty holiday lets.
So it seems like interior is a really important factor in what you look for to build a competitive advantage against other holiday lets in a particular area?
Definitely has to be.
Brilliant. And then in terms of the return on investment, that you guys see, what do you think is people can reasonably expect when they're kind of investing in your sort of area?
It's a very difficult question, that one, because I mean, return on investment comes from different sources, doesn't it? So you've got your initial outlay for the property, your outlay for the actual internal decoration to get it to where it's got to be. So, we've had 3 very uncertain years. So it's been up, down, higher, lower. And then obviously you got your capital gains in the property itself. So the property will increase in value, but they might decrease for a little bit. To be honest with you, it's a very difficult question to ask, because I don't really know what to say. But if you do it right, and you have the right management, and you get the right reviews, and it's, you find either a company like myself, or if you really do your research and know how to maximise on the potential, then, it can be a very good thing. Much better than an AST, I'd say.
So can you clarify what's an AST?
Oh, just a standard rental property. Short-term tenancy.
Right. So it's effectively versus a standard buy-to-let, I guess, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So people that are going to invest in a holiday let are looking at that as an alternative to a buy-to-let. A lot of my clients have maybe second properties, or they have annexes or whatever that's separate from their own homes, and they've had long-term guests in there before, long-term tenants, before, and it's it's not ended very well. The property's not been looked after, and it's just made them think, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to have to take that risk. And holiday letting enables you the ability to keep going and keep improving, keep maintaining, and also if you get a guest that isn't who you'd want to have living next to you, they go in a couple of days. So it is a much sort of nicer. It's better for your property, but the actual nuts and bolts of it are vast. You are literally juggling 1,000 balls day to day. There are so many elements to it and levels that it takes a lot of systemization. It took a long time, and you got to have good people as well. I mean, the key to everything, like I said before, unless you're going to physically do it yourself and clean it yourself, go and try and find a cleaner. It's the hardest thing in the world. We have got a real problem in this country right now where people just do not want to do these jobs. We've had Brexit, and all of the European workers have gone back to their countries and they're doing quite well there. So we have a massive shortage in the UK of good people. So that is your hardest challenge.
Brilliant. So what we like to do is basically round up the interview with your second funniest guest story.
Yes, another recent one. We don't allow pets at some of our properties, but a guest decided to bring a child's hamster, which escaped. So the hamster has never been found. So unfortunately, the poor little child has to go back empty-handed, and I'm just waiting for that call where, we can hear scratching, or we found a mouse dropping, and I'll have to let them know that is actually a rogue hamster. So yeah, that was an awkward conversation between the guests and myself, and a very sad little girl, but I'm sure she'll get over it. So
the hamster's still on the property?
Potentially. It has been a few weeks now. There hasn't been any sightings of said hamster, but yeah, potentially.
Is he paying rent, or?
Pardon?
You paying rent?
Hamster, yeah, definitely. He's got all the leftovers as well, But yeah, that is pretty tricky one, because what do you do in that scenario? Distraught child.
I feel sorry for the girl that lost it. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hamster. We all know hamsters are vicious, evil creatures. They appear cute and fluffy, but you try and handle a hamster, they are just
they're dangerous. Anyway, Gemma, thank you very much. Some really good insights there, I think, for people who are looking to get into or already hosting on Airbnb. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.